Ladies and gentlemen, there are few pains in life more piercing than this, to discover that the person you love spoke about you to someone else, and that what was said was not what you hoped to hear. It is a strange and intimate injury. It does not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrives like a whisper, and yet that whisper can shake the inner house of the soul more violently than a storm. You may continue to smile, to work, to answer messages, to sit at the table, to perform the ordinary duties of life, but inside, something has already been touched. Something has already split. The image you carried in your heart begins to tremble. The face you trusted begins to change. The voice you cherished begins to echo in a different key. And here, at the very beginning, I must say something important. When a loved one speaks of you in your absence, you are no longer only dealing with words. You are dealing with a revelation. You are dealing with a disclosure of the unconscious. You are dealing with the secret life of the relationship, the invisible life that always exists beneath the visible one. We human beings are fond of believing that love is made only of tenderness, loyalty, and promise. But love is also made of projections, fantasies, fears, compensations, and all the hidden material of the psyche. The person who loves you may also fear you, envy you, misunderstand you, idealize you, or unconsciously use you to satisfy needs they do not yet understand in themselves. This is why a single sentence spoken about you can feel larger than the sentence itself. It is never only a sentence. It is a symptom, a clue, a fragment of a much larger inner drama. When we are young in the soul, we imagine that being loved means being fully known and safely held. We believe that the beloved will see us as we wish to be seen. We believe that affection protects us from distortion, but life teaches otherwise. The closer a person comes to us, the more powerful the projection can become. They do not merely see us. They often see their own expectations, their own wounds, their own unhealed longings. They look at us through the window of their history. So when they speak about you to someone else, what comes out may not be the naked truth of who you are, but the mixture of you and their inner world. This does not make the pain less real, but it does make it more understandable. And understanding is the first medicine of the psyche. You may ask, what is it that hurts so deeply? Is it the criticism itself? Is it the gossip? Is it the betrayal of privacy? Is it the fear that others now see you differently? All of these may be present, but beneath them lies something even more primitive. The human heart longs to be recognized. It longs to be mirrored accurately. It longs for a witness who can say, I see you as you are, and I do not distort you for my convenience. When the person you love speaks about you without your knowledge, especially if the speech is careless or cruel, that longing is wounded. It feels as if your very reality has been handled without permission. It feels as if a sacred boundary has been crossed. It feels as if the soul was invited into a temple, and then discovered that the temple was being used for commerce. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, let us not rush too quickly into the language of accusation. The first question is not, how do I punish them? The first question is, what has this revealed? For every painful event in relationship has two dimensions, the visible event and the invisible meaning. The visible event may be that someone you love repeated your private matters to another person. The invisible meaning may be that your attachment to the image of that person was stronger than your knowledge of their humanity. We are often wounded when the people we love fail to remain the characters we wrote for them. We gave them a role in our internal theater. We made them noble, careful, loyal, perhaps even incapable of speaking poorly. Then one day, they acted from a part of themselves we had not accepted. The pain, then, is not only from their action, it is from the collapse of our illusion. This is why betrayal, in the psychological sense, is so profound. It does not merely break trust, it breaks fantasy. And fantasy is often more cherished than truth. Many people say they want reality, but they only want a reality that agrees with their desire. The moment reality becomes inconvenient, the soul cries out. Yet truth is merciless in one respect, and merciful in another. It destroys false images, and in doing so, it clears the ground for a more mature love. The person who has never been disillusioned has not yet entered adulthood of the spirit. They are still living in a dream, and the dream will eventually ask a price. Listen carefully, then, to the psychological lesson hidden in this wound. When someone speaks about you to another person, especially in a way that reaches your ears through rumor, report, or confession, you are not only hearing their opinion, you are hearing their relationship to you as mediated by their own unconscious. This means that what is said may reveal more about them than about you. A jealous person will describe you through jealousy. An insecure person will describe you through insecurity. A resentful person will color your image with resentment. A confused person will use words that betray their own confusion. A loving person may still speak imperfectly because love does not always mean clarity. And a weak person may betray private matters not because they are entirely evil, but because they have not yet developed the inner strength required to hold truth, discretion, and responsibility together in one soul. Here, many will be disappointed because they want simple justice. They want a clean villain and a clean victim. But the psyche is rarely so neat. Human beings are mixed creatures. The same mouth can bless and wound. The same heart can cherish and deceive. The same hand can comfort and abandon. This is why wisdom must be more subtle than outrage. Outrage says, "They have spoken, therefore they are false." Wisdom says, "They have spoken, therefore I must understand the meaning, the motive, and the condition from which these words arose." One response feeds the ego, the other feeds the soul. And what of your own response? For this is where the real work begins. The moment you learn that the person you love spoke about you, something in you will rise. It may be anger, it may be shame, it may be grief, it may be the desperate wish to confront, to expose, to retaliate, to demand explanation. These feelings are not wrong, they are human, but do not become their servant. Anger is a fire. It can cook food or burn down the house. Shame is a heavy shadow. It can drive you inward to reflection or downward into self-contempt. Grief can purify the heart, or it can curdle into obsession. You must therefore practice discernment. Not every feeling deserves immediate action. Not every wound requires immediate speech. Sometimes the strongest act is the refusal to become chaotic simply because another person has been chaotic toward you. This is one of the greatest secrets of inner dignity. Do not allow someone else's unconscious to become your personality. If they are careless, you need not become vengeful. If they are dishonest, you need not become theatrical. If they are confused, you need not become shattered. The event belongs to them. Your response belongs to you. This is where the soul becomes sovereign. But let me go deeper. Why does it hurt so much when a loved one speaks about you to someone else? Because love creates intimacy, and intimacy creates vulnerability. The more intimate the bond, the more delicate the structure. In a distant acquaintance, careless words may scarcely matter. In a deep relationship, the same words can wound like a blade. This is because the beloved occupies not only emotional space but psychic space. They live in the inner room of your mind. Their opinion has weight. Their tone has memory. Their slightest shift can change the climate of your whole day. To be loved is to be held inside another person's attention, and to discover that this attention is divided, distorted, or unfaithful is to feel the floor move beneath your feet. Yet even here, we must not confuse attachment with truth. The fact that someone occupies a sacred place in your heart does not grant them moral perfection. No human being is worthy of worship, and no human being should become your prison simply because your feelings are strong. The beloved is not a god. They are a person, and persons are unfinished. They are vulnerable to mood, habit, influence, vanity, fear, and the desire to be seen favorably by others. Sometimes people speak about those they love because they seek validation. They wish to be understood. They wish to justify themselves. They wish to share a burden. They wish to recruit allies for their emotional position. None of this makes the act harmless, but it makes it intelligible. And what is intelligible can be faced with greater strength. There is another layer here, and it concerns the shadow. The shadow is everything in us that we do not readily acknowledge: our envy, our cruelty, our need for attention, our wish to dominate, our fear of rejection, our secret satisfaction when others are diminished, our tendency to gossip, our tendency to exaggerate, our hunger to appear innocent. Many people would rather believe they are pure victims than examine the shadow within themselves. Yet if you have been hurt by someone speaking about you, ask yourself honestly whether you too have ever spoken lightly about another person's private reality. Have you never repeated a story? Have you never painted someone in a way that served your emotions? Have you never enjoyed being believed even when the full truth was more complex? The shadow is universal. The wise person does not deny it, they integrate it. Once you see that the capacity for betrayal exists in the human condition, you stop being shocked by human weakness and begin to take responsibility for your own conscience. This does not excuse the wrong, it humanizes it. And humanizing wrong is not the same as permitting it. You can understand without surrendering. You can forgive without returning to naivete. You can release resentment without ignoring patterns. These distinctions are essential. A mature soul does not confuse compassion with self-abandonment, nor does a mature soul confuse boundaries with cruelty. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is see another person clearly and stop making excuses for what is plainly unfit. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is say, I will not live inside a relationship where my dignity is negotiable. When someone you love speaks about you to someone else, the first danger is emotional panic. The second danger is self-erasure. In panic, you chase the wound. In self-erasure, you diminish yourself in order to preserve the relationship. You explain away the hurt. You say, perhaps I am too sensitive. You say, perhaps it was not serious. You say, perhaps if I loved better, this would not have happened. Be careful. There is a great difference between self-reflection and self-blame. Self-reflection asks, what is true here and what can I learn? Self-blame says, whatever happened, I must somehow be the cause. That latter voice is often the voice of an unhealed child, still trying to earn safety by becoming smaller. Do not do that to yourself. Your worth was never meant to depend on someone else's private commentary. The opinion of a beloved can be precious, but it must never become absolute. The psyche that depends entirely on another's approval is unstable. It becomes like a house built on water. Today it floats, tomorrow it sinks. Build instead on the deeper foundation, your own inward honesty, your own capacity to bear disappointment, your own refusal to abandon your conscience just because another person has disappointed you. This is how a human being becomes unbreakable, not by becoming hard, but by becoming truthful. And truth, ladies and gentlemen, is not always comfortable, but it is always liberating. The truth may be that this person spoke carelessly. The truth may be that they were influenced by others. The truth may be that they were trying to save face. The truth may be that they do not possess the depth you imagined. The truth may be that your love was more idealized than you knew. The truth may also be that they are not wholly malicious, merely immature, frightened, or unconsciously driven. Whatever the truth is, face it. Not because it is pleasant, but because it is real. A soul cannot become whole by feeding on illusions. There is a stage in life when we must mourn not only people but our pictures of people. This is a hidden grief, and many never name it. They say, I lost the relationship, when in fact they also lost the fantasy of who the other person was. This grief can be devastating because it alters not just the present but the past. We begin to reinterpret old moments. We ask whether the kindness was real, whether the affection was sincere, whether the promises were meant, whether we were only convenient. The mind becomes a courtroom. It replays every detail. It searches for the hidden evidence. It seeks to make the past confess, but the past rarely confesses in a way that satisfies us. The mind wants certainty, but life offers probability, ambiguity, and change. So what then shall you do? You must learn the art of inner separation. Separate the fact from the fantasy. Separate the behavior from the meaning you attach to it. Separate the person from the role they occupied in your imagination. Separate your self-worth from their inconsistency. This separation is not coldness, it is liberation. It allows love to move from possession to reality. It allows grief to become wisdom. It allows the soul to stop begging the wound for an answer it cannot give. There is something else I want to say, and it may be the hardest thing of all. Sometimes the loved one who speaks about you to someone else is not simply revealing their weakness, they are revealing the current state of the relationship. Not every relationship is what we think it is. Some are built on mutual need rather than mutual understanding. Some are built on attraction without maturity. Some are built on fantasy without accountability. Some are built on a desire to be wanted, not on the capacity to honor another's interior life. When such a bond is tested, its foundations are exposed. Words spoken in private, stories shared in confidence, half-truths repeated in another room. These are not accidents in the deepest sense. They are symptoms of the structure. That is why your task is not only to decide whether to stay or leave. Your task is to read the structure honestly. Does this relationship have room for truth? Does it have room for mutual respect? Does it have room for privacy, restraint, and repair? Or is it sustained mainly by emotion, habit, dependency, and fear of loss? If it is the latter, then no amount of wishing will make it noble. You cannot force depth into a vessel that is built for shallowness. You cannot command integrity where there is no willingness to practice it. And you cannot save a relationship by abandoning your own standards. Still, do not rush to bitterness. Bitterness is the soul's way of pretending it no longer cares. But it does care. It is only wounded. It hardens the heart and calls it strength. Real strength does not need bitterness. Real strength keeps the heart alive while refusing to be deceived. It mourns what is gone without poisoning what remains. It remembers the lesson without turning the lesson into a prison. If you can do this, you are already more advanced than the wound. Consider also how much of our suffering comes from imagined audiences. When we hear that the person we love spoke about us to someone else, we often become fixated not only on the words, but on who heard them. What do they now think of me? Have I been reduced? Have I been misrepresented? Have I lost status in the eyes of others? Here the ego exposes itself. We care deeply about our image. We wish to remain admirable, desired, and untarnished. But a psychologically mature person gradually becomes less dependent on the public silhouette and more concerned with private integrity. Let others misunderstand you for a time if necessary. Let your character endure the trial of misrepresentation. What matters is not that every eye approves, but that your conscience remains clear. This is a far higher standard than popularity. Indeed, the person who can tolerate being misunderstood is freer than the person who needs constant explanation. There will always be people who repeat fragments, exaggerate details, and speak from their own projections. You cannot govern every narrative. You can only govern your own conduct. Be cautious, be exact, be dignified, and be as truthful as you can. Then let time do some of the work. Time reveals what impulse hides. It strips away theatrical versions of events and leaves behind the pattern. In the long run, pattern matters more than gossip. A single remark may hurt, but a pattern tells the story. Learn to distinguish them. And now I must speak to those who in their pain are tempted to turn the person they love into an enemy of the soul. Be careful with that transformation. Hatred is seductive because it feels clarifying. It gives shape to confusion. It allows the wounded ego to stand upright and declare itself righteous. But hatred is also a possession. It narrows the personality. It keeps you spiritually tied to the very thing you resent. You continue to revolve around the offender. They remain central, even in your rejection. Do not grant them that power. Your task is to retrieve your energy, not merely to relocate your pain. To retrieve your energy means to take back the life that was poured into expectation, surveillance, overthinking, and emotional dependency. That energy can then be used for creation, work, solitude, healing, and deeper relationships. You may think that this is cold advice. It is not. It is compassionate realism. We are not healed by pretending that betrayal did not happen. We are healed by facing what happened and then refusing to let it define the architecture of our future. The wound may remain as memory, but it need not remain as command. It may instruct you, but it need not imprison you. There is a vast difference between remembering and being ruled by memory. Let me ask a question. What is love without truth? It is attachment. What is truth without love? It is brutality. Human maturity lies in the difficult union of the two. To love truly is to see. To see truly is to accept that the one you love is not made of your fantasies. They are a being with a private life, a hidden life, an unconscious life, and a capacity for both care and failure. This is not a reason to stop loving. It is a reason to love more consciously. Conscious love is not blind. It does not ignore the shadow. It does not worship the beloved. It does not deny injury. It respects reality. And where reality is lacking, it has the courage to withdraw, not in hatred, but in self-respect. There is a sadness in growing up. Some of you know it well. It is the sadness of discovering that tenderness alone does not guarantee fidelity, that intimacy alone does not guarantee honesty, that history alone does not guarantee loyalty. But this sadness is not the end. It is the beginning of discernment. Discernment is one of the rarest flowers in the human psyche. It blooms only when illusion has been sufficiently wounded. Until then, we live under the spell of expectation. Afterward, we may begin to see, and seeing is the beginning of freedom. So, when the person you love spoke about you to someone else, do not merely ask what was said. Ask what in you was attached to being unseen in that way. Ask why their opinion had so much power. Ask what kind of love you were actually living in. Ask whether you loved the person or the possibility they represented. Ask whether the relationship was helping you become whole or helping you avoid your own solitude. These are uncomfortable questions, but they are fertile ones. They lead not to despair, but to individuation, the process by which a human being becomes more fully themselves. Individuation requires that you stop seeking your whole identity in the eyes of another. It requires that you stop making another person the final authority over your value. It requires that you meet your own shadow, your own neediness, your own illusions, and your own capacity to misjudge. In this process, pain becomes teacher. The beloved's words, painful as they are, may be a messenger. Not a pleasant messenger, not a welcome messenger, but a messenger nonetheless. Sometimes life speaks through the very wound that offends us most. And what does the messenger say? It says, "Do not confuse being loved with being understood. Do not confuse being desired with being honored. Do not confuse familiarity with loyalty. Do not confuse attention with care. Do not confuse your fantasy of someone's heart with the actual movement of their soul." These distinctions, once learned, save years of suffering. They also save you from repeating the same error with different faces. I want now to speak to your heart directly. You may feel humiliated, but humiliation is not the final truth about you. You may feel betrayed, but betrayal is not the final truth about you. You may feel reduced, but you are not reducible to another person's commentary. Your being is larger than their opinion, larger than their mood, larger than their lapse in judgment. The self is not exhausted by the image another holds of it. Beneath the social self is the deeper self, the one that continues to grow, to learn, to grieve, to awaken. Guard that self, feed it with truth, do not abandon it to the courtroom of rumor. And remember this: when people speak about you, they often reveal the exact level at which they are meeting you. A shallow mind reduces, a fearful mind distorts, a jealous mind contaminates, a mature mind observes, a loving mind protects. A wise mind knows when to speak and when to remain silent. Therefore, what was said about you is a measure of their inner condition, yes, but it is also an invitation to measure yours. Will you answer from your wound or from your center? Will you surrender to the role others assign you, or will you remain faithful to your own becoming? This is the decisive question. Do not be afraid of losing an image that was never true. Do not cling to a story simply because it was comforting. It is better to stand in painful reality than to kneel before a charming falsehood. The soul is nourished by truth even when the ego protests. This is why certain revelations, though cruel in the moment, become blessings later. They remove what was unstable before it can destroy what is sacred. They expose what was hidden before it can poison what is whole. They make room for cleaner love, clearer judgment, and deeper self-respect. If the person you love truly values you, they will eventually face their own words, their own carelessness, and their own responsibility. If they do not, then your task is simpler, though not easier. Withdraw your inner dependency and protect your soul. Neither path requires self-betrayal. Both require courage. Do not be ashamed of the grief that follows. Grief means something mattered. It means the heart was alive, but do not make a home inside grief. Walk through it. Learn from it. Leave it with what it teaches, not with what it demands. In the end, every human wound asks the same question. Will this pain make you smaller, or will it make you truer? That is the choice. Some become bitter and call it wisdom. Some become suspicious and call it experience. Some become cold and call it strength. But the highest response is neither bitterness nor naivety. It is clarity with compassion. It is boundaries without hatred. It is truth without cruelty. It is self-respect without arrogance. It is the willingness to say, yes, I was hurt. Yes, I was disappointed. Yes, I now see more clearly. And no, I will not abandon my soul because another soul failed me. So, when the person you love spoke about you to someone else, hear not only the insult, not only the disappointment, not only the rumor. Hear also the summons. Life is calling you to become less dependent on private approval and more anchored in inner truth. It is calling you to recognize projection, shadow, and illusion. It is calling you to distinguish love from fantasy. It is calling you to reclaim your dignity. It is calling you to live in reality, where sorrow is possible, but freedom is too. And if you answer that call, something remarkable happens. The wound begins to lose its tyranny. The thought that once consumed you begins to loosen its grip. The person who once occupied the center of your emotional world returns to their proper size, human, limited, imperfect, and no longer the architect of your worth. Then you begin, slowly and quietly, to recover yourself. You recover your breath. You recover your center. You recover the quiet authority that no rumor can touch. That is how suffering becomes initiation. That is how disappointment becomes discernment. That is how the heart, once broken by hearing what was said in its absence, grows into something stronger than innocence. Wisdom.